Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba back once again. We're here to celebrate Africana Freedom Fighters, our Veterans Day, right? So if anyone who's watching, make sure you tap in, hit that subscribing, of course, hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, and the notification bell. You're watching, of course, LumumbaSpeaks.com in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. And we're, of course, going to be honoring our freedom fighters, the Black freedom fighters, Africana freedom fighters, our veterans, those who were about that life, about that action, and did everything that they could to, of course, bring about the freedom and, of course, independence of African people, irrespective of where we are on the planet. I think this is particularly particular for a number of reasons. One, I would argue that we're typically educated or socialized or miseducated to place value in Black people who work for the state, right? For example, and I can recall Brother Dwayne Omawale, as we know, he is one of the resident historians here at Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network. And along with Mr. K, so I want to go shout out to Mr. K if you're watching, you know what I'm saying, give us a thumbs up. One of the things he mentioned, we were talking about a conversation regarding Colin Powell and, of course, Stokely Carmichael. And Colin Powell, this is when he became the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He stated that this joining the military is a great way to be successful for Black people in America. And, of course, Stokely Carmichael, we know Stokely Carmichael is the Trinidadian-born, Bronx, New York raised, Howard University educated, former Prime Minister of Black America. He stated that was absolutely ridiculous, right? He says, when you join the military, you're nothing but a mercenary. You are a murderer. You are a mercenary for, of course, Wall Street. So something to consider. I think if we even look at the contemporary example, the sister from Georgia who ran for governor. Yes, Stacey Abrams. I have a book here, right? Minority. She wrote a book titled Minority Leader, and she gained a lot of praise for registering a lot of Black people to vote, particularly for the Democratic Party. As anyone knows, both the Republican and Democratic Party are both white supremacist organizations. So we tend to find, even in the media, this push to honor Black people who work in service of course, the empire or American imperialism. But I think it's important as African people that we honor those who fought for our freedom, for our humanity, for our right to live. So want to make sure that we highlight that, family. Once again, if you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button, thumbs up. Hit the notification bell as well. You're watching, of course, LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. If you're watching, family, the link is in the description. The link will be in the chat momentarily. But I also want to share with you all, I would be remiss if I did not share this information with you all. I released my first book on Amazon. It's titled The Red, Black, and Green Papers, Volume 1, Views on Race, Power, and Society from a 21st Century Pan-Africanist. So if you are interested in picking that up, you could go on Amazon right now. The link is now in the chat, and purchase The Red, Black, and Green Papers, Volume 1, Views on Race, Power, and Society from a 21st Century Pan-Africanist. So make sure that you check that out. If you also go into LumumbaSpeaks.com, you can actually go to our associated links, and my author profile is on Amazon. And of course, you can purchase, of course, my first book, The Red, Black, and Green Papers, Volume 1, Views on Race, Power, and Society from a 21st Century Pan-Africanist. So, and now the link is in the description, family. So listen, the link is in the description, link is in the chat. I want you all to tap in, be part of the conversation. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to put the link in the chat on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you're interested in tapping in, you will be able to do so. Because I don't want to exclude you all from the conversation simply because you are on a different platform. So what we're going to do, give me 1 second, I'm going to put this in. There we go. All right. So yes, so the link is on X, formerly known as Twitter, as well. So you can now tap in and be part of the conversation. And really want to have, let's see here. Mr. Sandman has a comment. I disagree. The military is the best way to get combat training. South Korea, every boy must serve the military when they become 18. So I think we may be at an impasse here, right? Or maybe we're misunderstanding each other. That'd be a better way of putting it. Uh, I'm not stating that you. I was in the military. You know that you were in the military as well. I agree with the combat training, right? Like you go in and you become the best of the best of the best, serve with honors, right? What I'm referring to is the concept and idea that this is a way to become successful in American society by joining an organization that is rooted in what? American imperialism. That's what I'm speaking to. But I would agree. I mean, I served in the military. I would be remiss in my duty, and I would even be disingenuous if I stated that I did not learn great combat training while I was in the service. As many of you know, I shared this story. I served in two branches of the military, first in the Navy, and of course, even in the Army. And I tell you, it was hell to go through basic training twice. Of course, if you're in the Navy, you serve basic training at one place and one place only. That is, of course, Great Lakes, Illinois, about an hour north of Chicago, the Windy City. And then, of course, in the military, I did my basic, and then, of course, my mission specific, my job specialty school at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. So definitely, family, tap in, be part of the conversation. We definitely want to talk about freedom fighters, our veterans that we should honor, Africana Freedom Fighters. One I can think of is one who transitioned not too long ago, and I know that probably hurt a lot of people's heart, and that is Queen Mother Assata Shakur. When we talk about someone who truly advocated and fought for, of course, our freedoms, right? I think she's at the top of the list, particularly of one who was contemporarily an ancestor, recently an ancestor. I've always told people that if you ever get a chance to read Assata Shakur's memoir, her autobiography, published in the mid-1980s, it, to me, is the Pan-African female equivalent of Malcolm X's memoir. I mean, I literally have it on equal footing, right? You know how some people say they can't decide who they want, Jordan or Kobe or LeBron, et cetera, et cetera. But I definitely would argue that her memoir is on that level. I gained as much insight and knowledge and inspiration, right, in terms of not only fighting but and advocating for African people from an African frame of reference, to becoming a Pan-Africanist, but also in terms of gaining a sense of racial pride, right, from her memoir as well. So I definitely want to give a shout out to Queen Mother Assata Shakur. I'm also going to argue that we always have to honor, our brothers and sisters from Haiti. I mean, as you know, I've written several articles on our brothers and sisters from Haiti. And I believe wholeheartedly that Haitian people are I would argue, the greatest African people on the planet, right? We talk about sans passe, yes. And there's a reason for that, right? When we talk about brothers and sisters from Haiti, their ability, and we know what they did in 1791, what started in 1791, took 13 years to accomplish, defeating the French, defeating the British, defeating the Spanish, defeating the French again in succession. But not only that, but after they gained sovereignty, right, and they were still fighting for their freedom and to maintain that, they did not rest on their laurels. They didn't say, hey, we handled our BI, black people in here in the West, you're going to have to figure it out on your own. No, they created a they were a Pan-African nation. They actually, oftentimes when we talk about this transatlantic slave trade and the pushback against the transatlantic slave trade, we typically learn about the British fighting against the transatlantic slave trade. But we never learned about the history of Haitian people fighting against the transatlantic slave trade, right? We talk about King Henry Christophe, right, leading fleets of Haitian ships on the high seas, capturing European slavery vessels, and then taking those brothers and sisters who were captive and bringing them to Haiti and allowing them to have and then caring for them and allowing them to become citizens of their nation. We don't hear about that when we learn about fighting against the slave trade. That would be an example. So I definitely believe that we should honor our brothers and sisters from Haiti, right? They, of course, serve as the example of what militant fight, an armed fight against, of course, the European or Western slaveocracy looks like, and that by taking up arms, we could be successful and of course, come back on the world stage as a free, proud, and of course, productive people. If you're watching, family, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well. Also implore you all to make sure to be a blessing to the show. You can give, of course, on Cash App, Venmo, and of course via the Super Chat. So definitely thank everyone who's watching as we honor, of course, Africana Freedom Fighters, where we're honoring our veterans here on Veterans Day. So definitely tap in, family. You can, of course, put your comments in the chat or be part of the conversation. As you all know, you do not have to cam up to be part of the conversation. You do not have to cam up. And you can, keyword, you can use a pseudonym. I know for many people, they want to maintain their anonymity, and for good reason, right? Here we talk about some particularly politically and racially charged topics. And so oftentimes that can cause issues for someone in the workplace or whatever field and endeavor one is pursuing. And so as a result, you can tap in, be part of the conversation, and maintain your anonymity by using a pseudonym and not showing your face. But I do ask that if you tap in while you're in queue, if you are not a regular, that you of course show your face in queue so that we know that you're not trolling. We have had issues in the past of individuals trolling, and then we bring them in live and they're providing some unsavory and untoward visual content that I don't think anybody wants to see. So with that being said, family, put the link in the chat. You can discuss in the chat who are some veterans, some Africana freedom fighting veterans that you believe that we should honor. Of course, we're going to highlight a number of individuals on our platform via our Pan-African Leadership Series, right, where we're honoring and, of course, researching and studying the life, work, and, of course, the legacy of great Pan-Africans in the past and learn how to make a great, better world for African people in the future. And that's, of course, our Pan-African Leadership Series. We have, of course, lessons from history here on the platform. But also, I think what's most important is that we hear from you all. They hear from our brothers and sisters and get their thoughts on our Africana Freedom Fighters. I also saw a post up by one of the brothers from Haiti, I believe he's Haitian, where he was discussing, of course, Ibrahim Toure. So I think we definitely got to give him, some love, even though he's not a veteran right now. He actually is actively in the struggle. But one of the things that Ibrahim Toure was discussing was, of course, reaching out to the diaspora, right? So, of course, building those bridges. So I think definitely engaging in Pan-Africanist work. And as we know, that's not something that has been promoted in the mainstream media. And we know that's done for a particular reason, of course, promoting propaganda. And we see the things that typically will bring us together, they are typically looking to use to what? Tear us apart. Also, a freedom fighter that I believe that we need to honor is one Nat Turner. We know the prophet, and of course the revolutionary Nat Turner, who of course led a slave revolt in Southampton County, Virginia, if I remember correctly, in 1831, August of 1831. He of course was captured in October 1831. And then of course on this day, many years ago, he was hung by, of course, the state for his crime. So we definitely want to give praise and love and honor to, of course, Nat Turner. Many people, of course, still, unfortunately, due to the miseducation machine or the prevaricating belief that African people did not fight back during the Holocaust of enslavement. Of course, we know that isn't true. But Nat Turner is an example of the lengths that African people, enslaved Africans and their descendants would go to for freedom, even though they were aware of the draconian consequences of fighting for their freedom if they were caught. So that's something to consider as well. So irrespective of what was done to try to break our spirit and our fight for to maintain our humanity and even restore our freedom, we never, keyword, never acquiesce. So something to consider. Also, Mr. Sandman, you said in South Korea, are you referring to South Korea or North Korea? We know North Korea is what we consider a totalitarian state, but definitely want to hear from you. I do know in Israel as well, one is required to serve in the military as well. But as our brother from Virginia says, is it real? So hopefully that will take a tap in as well. He still dribbles down in BA. So definitely want to hear from you all. Tap in, be part of the conversation. Would love to hear from you all regarding who should we honor? Who should we honor when we are discussing honoring Africana freedom fighters, where we're celebrating our Veterans Day, or like I would like to say, a Pan-African Veterans Day? We'd love to hear from you all regarding that topic. Once again, if you're watching on Twitter, I put the link in the comments below. And so you should be able to tap in and be part of the conversation. But love to hear from you all regarding what veterans you believe we should honor here on Veterans Day, what we're calling Pan-African Veterans Day, right? So definitely tap in, family, be part of the conversation. Look forward to hearing from you all. And make sure you're a blessing to the show via the Super Chat, Venmo, and of course, Cash App. Would love to hear from you all, particularly in regards to what veterans should we honor today. Mr. Sandman, what's the word?
Hey, Mr. Word, how you doing?
I'm doing good, baby. As you already know, it's still, the Ohio State University number one team in the country and the defending national champions, handling our BI like we're supposed to. I saw once again, even with a new coach, y'all couldn't pull it out against a top five team.
Yeah, well, yeah, at least he's a brother, a black man, a fellow Afro American who's
But
leading
I
the
thought
charge.
James Franklin was black as well.
Who?
James Franklin is a
Oh,
black man.
Franklin. Oh, he was. I didn't even know that. I couldn't tell.
Yeah. James Franklin was black. Yeah, it's extremely
Oh,
fair.
okay, my bad.
So, but real
Um,
quick, I apologize for deviating. Were you referring to South Korea or North Korea in your comment?
South Korea. I was stationed in
Okay.
South Korea for some time, and
Okay.
in South Korea, that is also part of obligation for all of the men in South Korea. They have to do civil service, have to serve the military. I mean, I guess because of the ongoing threat of North Korea at any given
Right.
time, they could, I guess another Korean War could break out. All young men, all men in Korea, Southern Korea, have to go be combat trained and serve the military.
Got you. What
Yeah,
branch? What branch of the military did you serve in?
I served in the army.
Got you. Okay. So, what Africana Freedom Fighters would you like to honor today on Pan African Veterans Day?
Oh man, this is one man. I'm pretty sure you know of him. His last name is Pompey, and I can't recall his first name at the present time, but he was a freedom fighter when the British, not the British, but the Bahamians, the slaves
Okay.
in the Bahamas had emancipated themselves from British slavery. Even prior to us in the Americas or in the United States, in the 13 colonies, or prior to the Emancipation Proclamation, they had did something similar to what the Haitians had did and
Okay.
fought for their freedom. And the leader of that charge was his last name was Pompey or something to that effect. There's a museum named after him in the Bahamas as well.
Got you.
Yeah, I wish I could remember. I was trying to search it up before I called in.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, his last name's Pompey. Yeah, so apparently what had happened was oh, okay, yeah, now I recall. During the Revolutionary War, a lot of plantation owners, the white plantation owners in the South, in South Carolina and Georgia, because they were afraid to lose their property from the British attacking them, the British soldiers attacking them. What they did was they relocated their plantation to the Bahamas, and they brought a lot of American slaves or black people to the Bahamas, and those people are actually the same descendants of, the people who were in bondage as chattel slavery in the Carolinas as we were,
Hmm.
and shortly, or at least before the Civil War, they they fought for their freedom and overthrew their plantation owners in the Bahamas. And one of the catalysts in that fight, his last name was Pompey.
Got you. Okay.
Mhm.
Very good. And anyone else?
Oh shoot, I'll mention my people. I was doing some research on the history of the plantations that my family's from, and one of the plantations that we're from. Um,
I wouldn't
we
say
were,
that's where you all are from. It's just where you were located or
or
working.
where we were located, rather. Yeah, we were actually forced to fight against the rebels and with the British. Now, I don't know if they promised us our freedom if the British had won the war, but
Hmm.
the Revolutionary War. But that just goes to show you like how long we've been here for so long. That's 300 years or so ago.
Right.
He was already here, fighting for our freedom. So yeah, that's one branch of my family that was attempted to fight for our freedom, even though they were forced to. so to speak. It's unfortunate that a lot of our freedom fighters, they aren't, glamorized or glorified
Right.
too much in media. All we hear about is people like Shaka Zulu. Would you consider him a freedom fighter?
Um, you know that is that is a great argument, but I would argue anyone who fought to preserve the sovereignty or freedom of African people, I would consider them a freedom fighter in that aspect.
Yeah, but he also went to war with a lot of his own people as
Right,
well. So,
right, yeah,
so it was like he was the gift and the curse. He fought the British, but then he also fought his own people.
right,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Those are the only people I can think of. Sojourner Truth.
yeah.
Um, she was one. Um, who was that lady who they were trying to put her on the $5 bill, I believe, or the $20 bill?
My Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman, yeah, for
Yeah,
the Underground Railroad. When you talk about freedom fighters, I always like try to associate them with some military that they might have been a part of, but
right.
I guess you could
Think
call
of
those.
Martin Delaney. Martin Delaney would be an example. Father of Black nationalism.
Yeah, Father Black. Oh yeah, yeah. Um, what about the Tuskegee Airmen?
Well, they weren't fighting. So this is tough, right? Because we know during World War II, African Americans who served in the military engaged in what was known as the Double V campaign. So double V meant double victory, but they were fighting against fascism in Europe and, of course, against racism at home. My concern with listing individuals who served in the United States Armed Forces, and of course, as you all know, I'm a veteran myself, as veterans and for cause for Black freedom there was never a time where they were fighting against the powers that sought to deny us freedom. They were actually fighting for them, like the King's African Rifles during the World War II on the continent, right? They were fighting for the colonial power, not against it.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that is a concern for me. So myself, right? Unless if I would have stayed in the military, I don't think you could honor me as someone who would be an Africana freedom fighter, right? Because I'm fighting for the very entity that is causing our social, political, and economic global quagmire.
Well, what about the idea that the Tuskegee Airmen helped to end like segregation, or the idea that black people or black men aren't as worthy of soldiers as white
Right.
men are in society?
Right, and I think you're right there. We do know that there was a belief that Black people could not serve. They did not have the valor or the capacity or the bravery or valor to serve in a combat, of course, capacity. I would argue uh, I wouldn't give a damn. I said that we shouldn't be fighting in their wars in the first place, right? I'm of the mind of one A. Philip Randolph, right? Who said that he implored people not to join and fight in of course, in Black people to fight in World War One. So proving to them that, and part of that belief was that if we served, we could prove that we are worthy of citizenship, right? We served, and they
Right.
served in the valor, they served in an exemplary manner, and they still weren't treated like citizens. So, we know with them folks, they just move the goalposts. We know that. But I don't think there's any honor in trying to prove our bravery or valor to people who don't even honor or believe that we're human beings.
Yeah, yeah. You wonder, it's like, had they not done that, what position would we be today? Would it be any different than where we
Right.
are now?
And I always tell Black people, if you join the military, and of course I implore Black people not to do so, but if you join the military, I said you should join and have a job specialty that is non-combat oriented, right? You should not put your life on the line for a country that doesn't give two what's about you. For example, we know that Black people make up 12% of the U.S. population, but we make up 41% of all those killed, wounded, and missing in action in U.S. military conflicts. Last time I checked, 12 doesn't equal 41 unless you times about 3 and add 5. That's a freaking problem. right? And in the movie, and I'm glad you brought this up, in Spike Lee's movie Miracle at St. Anna, it flopped at the box office, but I thought it was a great movie. There's a scene where the black soldiers are in Italy, and Derek Luke's character says, "Well, this is progress. We're proving that we can fight." And he said, "Progress, please." He says, "The only reason we're serving in a combat mentality, in a combat capacity, is because too many white boys are getting mowed down." He says it's in the movie. Yeah, great movie. I've shown it, you know, and for my students when we're covering African American history. From, of course, 1865 to the present. I showed them that movie. The progress. I remember I showed them, you know, there's a lot of individuals in the media who would argue. Now, I showed them a video from The View where Whoopi Goldberg and what's the chick that was on the Cosby Show that says she ain't black?
Are you talking about
Simone? She was like, "Yeah, we know we were fighting for the right to be Americans. That's what we were fighting for." And they're like, "Yeah," and everybody starts clapping. I told my students that's propaganda. That's why you shouldn't listen to celebrities. That's why Malcolm X said these people are puppets and clowns. So I showed them the clip from the movie where the brother said, "Please, we can fight." He said, "Man, we're on a military base. They have German prisoners of war on the base. They get to eat in a restaurant. They got to go out back, and they're being called monkeys and baboons." I said they weren't fighting for the right to be an American. They were fighting for the right to be recognized as a human being.
So what about those young African American people who aren't in the best situation, you know, similar to maybe even the situation that you were and I grew up in,
Yes, sir.
where they were, you know, in the bad family structure, what have you, you know, parents on drugs, what have you, or they in the projects, and there's no way out other than the streets or, you know, jail. Like,
Right.
what would you suggest would be the best path for them? Do you think like military would be a good? Because you
Yeah.
know the majority of the people in the military, regardless of color, are people of lower economic status. Yeah.
Very true. Yeah, and so that's why I say if someone's going to join, you know, make sure that your job specialty is non-combat oriented. That's what I always advocate.
Yeah.
And because I understand that most people who join the military, it is not due to out of patriotism, it is out of economic need. I am 1,000% aware of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you would say that for some of the kids that's growing up in these neighborhoods and in some of these ghettos, they're getting PTSD from just their neighborhood, you know.
Right. That's a good point. That is a good point. Absolutely. So yeah, so I'm with you 100% there. 100% there. You know, and you know that's rare because you know you are a Nittany Lion, you know, but hey. Yeah, I would agree with you 100%.
All right, yeah.
You know, but it's all good. I mean, listen, we're gonna show y'all how you're supposed to win a natty. We'll do it again for y'all just because you all weren't paying attention last year.
Who Ohio State? You think Ohio State going to pull it off this year?
Do I think? Is there an acoustical problem on my laptop? I know that Ohio State is going to repeat as national champions. I know, not think. I know.
I think the odds are against them.
We don't care about no odds. The Haitians didn't care about no odds in 1791. Right? We don't care about no odds.
Yeah. So how many times?
Care about no odds in 1896 when they went up against the Italians. We don't care about no odds. The odds are against us. The Mau didn't care about no odds when they were going up against the British. Right?
Yeah.
Ibrahim Traore don't care about no odds. Talking about the odds. We are the odds.
It's just that, hey, teams. I mean, it's a rare feat for one university to go back to back like that. And this ain't even what's this, like the third or fourth championship in how many years for Ohio State if they were to win it again?
Well, if we won it again, that would be our fourth in 20 years.
20 years? I guess that ain't too much, but I remember Nick Saban in Alabama was dominating for a while, and then the boys in Georgia was dominating for a while. So I guess it's Ohio State's turn this time around.
Yeah,
but that's only because Penn State messed up.
We got to make it our time. We got to make it our time. So, but I think those are some great points that you brought up when we talk about the reality of why people join the military. And I can recall vividly and you probably know this. When you come home and leave, you can serve a week at a recruiting station, and your leave doesn't count against you. You may be aware of that. So I did that, and I remember we was only going to economically depressed neighborhoods. I said, why are we going to the suburbs? And they said because they don't need the military.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. And even Michael Myers talks about that in one of his documentaries about those who have America. People are those who have the least in America are giving the most, and that is oftentimes their lives. And I remember in one of Michael Myers' documentaries, he's a wild boy, by the way. He's from Flint, Michigan, the white guy. He was on Capitol Hill, and he was going up to congressmen and senators on Capitol Hill. And he was like, hey, this is during, of course, the war in Iraq. He said, if you really want to get behind the war effort, I have this petition here to have your own children and family members serve in the military. Because if you are a senator or congressman, you can have that. You could create a situation where they don't have to serve, even if there is a draft. And so I remember one of the congressmen tell him like he was crazy. He said, "But we really want you to show that you're truly behind the war effort by willing to put members of your own family on the front lines."
Well, they used to do that back in the day. Well, what would happen is instead of them just being soldiers, they would be like officers. Because if you were an officer, first you have to go to college first, get your college degree,
Right.
and then you become a commissioned officer in the military. And when you become a commissioned officer in the military, you don't necessarily have to go into a combat situation. Exactly. They just basically you just stay at the headquarters and direct people, and those. Mm-hmm. Those would be the so-called people in the military who come from, more of a wealthy background and make a career out of the military, and even add that to their resume when they go into the private sector. Okay, I was a commander of this many troops in the military, such and such, and then they next thing you know, they become like a CEO of a Fortune 500 corporation.
Yeah, there was a great TV movie that came out when I was a child, in which Queen Latifah starred in it. And I'm gonna see if I can try to find this in her filmography. But in the movie, her father was a war hero in Vietnam. And there was some white guy who was in his company who was a coward and cowered up and so on and so forth. And what ended up taking place. I'm trying to see if I can find this movie. It's called, that won't be it. What ends up taking place is they get back to America, and this guy ended up being a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Her father was mopping floors in the same office building. Yeah, and then I remember saying that in the movie. I'm trying to find the movie. I don't think I'm going to be able to find it. But yeah, it was a TV movie. So let me go here. It was a TV movie. So that's what I might need to go look at. Critic. Yeah, but it was a TV movie. It was Mama Flora's Family. It was a 1997 historical fiction. Mama Flora's Family. It's the name of it was a 2-part TV miniseries, Mama Flora's Family. Yep. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. I never forget that how old was I? 14 years old. Yeah, Mama Flora's Family. So I vividly remember that. So you're absolutely right. These are the type of things that take place. And so we talk about, once again, having that racial privilege. If anyone's familiar with critical race theory, it's one of the things they talk about. Of course, it's the racial privilege that one has in the United States of America, and particularly the Western world, or what we would like to call the global north. So just something to consider. Once again, family, if you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit that notification bell. If you're watching on Twitter, you can tap in here at Lumumba Speaks on YouTube. Would love for you all to tap in, be part of the conversation, or put your comments in the chat. Once again, family, you are watching Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire in the home of African-centered news and information here on YouTube. Mr. Sandman, let me ask you this question, right? You talked about the Tuskegee Airman. I gave my perspective. Do you think that Black soldiers who served in the military, the United States Armed Forces, should be honored as freedom fighters or revolutionaries?
Yes, I do.
Uh-oh. Go ahead.
And the reason why I say that is because I believe that, they the United States is the most powerful nation in the world,
Okay.
and even though we might be at the bottom of the totem pole of the United States, we're still Americans, so we have that privilege of being American and part
Are
of
we Americans?
huh?
Are we Americans?
Yeah, I mean, we might not be compared Americans as much as like white people are, but we're Americans compared to like maybe I don't know a person from a different country might not be. So I believe that those people who sacrificed for the military allowed us to enjoy a certain amount of privileges today as Black
Really?
Americans.
So, there are many who would argue, and I'm going to bring up a post from an acquaintance of mine, Dalo Kenyatta, that we do not owe our freedoms to the military. All right, let me bring up this post here. He put this up a while ago. Wow. Yes. Right, so here we go. Yeah, it says we do not owe our freedoms to the military. Right, the military has always played a role in preventing Black people from having the very freedom.
Well, I'll ask you this: like, if we didn't participate in all of these wars, as Black people in the United States, where do you think America would be is standing as a global superpower? Do you think it would be where it is today?
Absolutely.
So you don't think they needed us? That we just were just sacrificial lambs for them?
Absolutely. I believe we were simply cannon fodder. In fact, there's a great book that talks about that issue, particularly during the Vietnam War, and that is Bloods, an oral history of the Vietnam War from Black soldiers, right? I actually have the book somewhere. It might even be in my office. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's a book called Bloods, an oral history. Let me bring that up. But these are soldiers who actually make that very argument. Here we go. I'm going to stop sharing to bring this up here. Here we go. Yes, Bloods, Black veterans of the Vietnam War and oral history. Yeah.
Well, I believe that if it wasn't for Black people, there wouldn't be in the United States at all.
That's called propaganda, brother.
Well, if you think about the history of the United States, right? And the Europeans came over to the United States and started a global international trade, right? In the translated slave trade, right?
Absolutely.
If they didn't have us in the 13 colonies to start
So
the
are you talking about
translated,
the free labor that they were able to extract from us?
right? Yeah, if they didn't have
Okay,
that,
I got you. Okay, absolutely. I thought you were talking about in terms of the military, but yes, I got you 100%. Overstood.
yeah.
Overstood. Absolutely.
And then when the Revolutionary War started, because they had gained so much, the 13 colonies had gained so much prestige from our free labor, they were able to fight for their own freedom against the British colonizers.
Mm-hmm. No, but they weren't fighting for our freedom, so.
No, and then they used us as buffalo soldiers against the Native Americans to gain more land for them.
Right. And how do we benefit from that?
We benefit from being at the bottom of the total social total poll of the most powerful country in the world. I don't know.
No, I'm saying,
Would you rather be
did
like
we gain any, no, so this is my point. Did we gain any social, political, were there any material or substantial benefits from us helping white folk annihilate Native Americans?
yeah, like I said, is we help them become more powerful.
Yeah, but how do we benefit from that?
We benefit because, like, all right, say for instance, the the black dollar in the United States, right,
Mm-hmm.
is worth like, maybe a couple $1 trillion. Like just our black dollar in the United States alone is a higher GDP of a lot of countries' entire.
Yeah, well, that is spending power, not ownership. But here's the other issue: Buffalo Soldiers existed from post Civil War to, or many would argue, pre Civil Rights Movement. And during this time, Black people lived under what was known as according to a historian Rayford Logan, Pan African historian at Howard University, in his book "The Betrayal of the Negro: From Rutherford B. Hayes to Woodrow Wilson." We lived under a condition known as the nadir of race relations. It was anti-black racism was at its zenith, where we literally had no rights whatsoever. So we didn't benefit. We were living in a country in which we do the bidding of what? White folk, but we have no rights whatsoever. That's not a benefit. That's not a political benefit. That's not a material benefit. That's not a social benefit.
I think it's not what happens. I don't think it's
people being victims of white vigilantism while they're wearing their military uniforms during this time period.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think it's what happens to us. I think it's how we respond to it. Because you could say, all right, we have $10 trillion or $2 trillion of spending power, but we took, a percentage of that and I don't know, invested in some West African country and use that as a base for us to like do partnerships across the ocean. I mean, just like Marcus Garvey attempted to do.
We've done those things. The reality of the situation is we were living in a country in which we had no rights whatsoever. That's the reality, and that's what most people overlook. That's why I argue serving in the military is not a revolutionary act. It may benefit you individually in terms of stability and you're able to, make a living, etc. But it doesn't benefit us as a community because serving in the United States military, the focus is on what promoting imperialism. You're the muscle for Wall Street. That's the reality.
Yeah,
it doesn't benefit Black people's freedom or liberation in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean that's what all these wars are about. Is about money and power.
So, yeah, I mean, for example, and I can't call him a brother, but the Black man, and I use the term Black man in air quotes, Black man who, of course, is a general in the Marines. He was what going along with what Wall Street, American imperialism, claiming that they needed to assassinate Ibrahim Traoré. That's a primary example of what serving in the military is not a benefit to African people. On our fight for, of course, our sovereignty. LMA, who dribbles down in VA, what's the word, brother? Long time, no speak. LMA, can you hear me? Although we may be having some technical difficulties. But can you hear us now, brother?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you just fine.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I'm glad I'm finally able to catch you, man. I've been missing you for like I've been missing your streams for like the last 2 or 3 you did. So I'm glad I was able to catch one.
I've been very consistent, and I apologize about that. But as always, life is life, and so
it's all good. It's all good, man. Yeah, I guess the question is for Veterans Day, which Black revolutionaries we should honor?
Yes,
It
sir.
was that the question. Um, I'm thinking what's the brother's name? Robert Williams.
Okay.
Um, Robert F. Williams. Definitely him. 'Cause especially like Robert F. Williams and the Dinkins of Defense. I
Yes.
think those two should definitely get a parade. They should be getting the free breakfast at Denny's. I think
Mhm.
those two. Uh, I mean, among the others, but like in terms of like putting belt to butt. I
Absolutely.
would I would definitely throw those two in the
Well,
mix. I know you mentioned Nat Turner and those guys.
I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit,
Go ahead.
right? And I don't think they put belt to butt. I think they put buckle to butt because the buckle hurts more.
Oh yeah,
Go right
exactly. No, those two. I mean, I know you mentioned like Nat Turner. You mentioned I can't. I'm drawing a blank. You mentioned a few others that I
ahead.
definitely agree with.
Shakur as well.
Yeah, cool, yeah. Shout out to Shakur, yeah. There's one I want to mention, but I don't want to say it because I don't want you to get I don't want you to get a flag on your
No, no,
I don't
go
want you.
right ahead, brother. You're caught all right.
What's that?
Go right ahead. It's okay.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings, and I want to revisit the case, but
Yeah,
the brother.
that's
What's that?
why we're here.
Say that again.
Absolutely, that's why we're here.
Yeah. Christopher Dorner, the cop in was in Los Angeles who went on that he showed the LAPD exactly what he thought of them.
Oh yeah,
Um
I know who you're talking about. I would agree with you 100%.
yeah, because I know that like that he had his manifesto, and a lot of it was he was talking about like how he felt about the um you know the way that they treated him and the way they treated other black suspects of crime and all this other stuff. And so but then like, obviously he's dead, and obviously the media is going to paint him in a bad light, and so I can't really make heads or tails of it. But in terms of like putting belt buckle to behind, he was
Mm-hmm.
definitely you know, willing to put it all on the line. But I did want to say one thing that I thought was, especially during that time frame, when people wanted, because we had a lot of, deaths and killings going on that time, uh, 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 that's when we had the AME church shooting, and then we had a couple of cops being ambushed or whatever,
Yes.
and people were trying to kind of like put Dylan Roof and Christopher Dorner and the other guy on the same level, right? And I thought that was that was so trashy to me because obviously I'm not trying to incite or condone violence like that, but there's a difference between when black men go off the rails and then when white men go off the rails. Because when black men go, when they snap, they go after the people and institutions they have a problem with. When whites, snap, they go after little old grandmas in churches. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
because if you look at Chris Dorner, I mean, he took it directly to Christopher Dorner. What's the brother name? Micah X. Micah X has some issues, and there was another guy, Gavin Long. You know what I'm saying? These guys went toe to toe with the police, but Dylan Roof, his thing was he had an issue with black women, black men, and white women. But when he was time for him to take out his frustration, he went after little old grandmas in a church somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Little
Mhm.
old defenseless grandmas in a church. That's his target. But at least but that was just a thought that I had. But yeah, I would definitely, if I had to add to the list, I would do Robert F. Williams and the Deacons of Defense.
Okay. You know what? I'm not mad at you, brother. Yeah, I'm not
Mhm.
that mad at you at all. I would argue that people don't snap. They simply say enough is enough.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the brother back in the '90s who Colin Ferguson, the brother from Jamaica. Shout out to John Rock, by the way. Matter of fact, we're gonna talk about veterans. We gotta mention Queen Annie in the Maroon, right? Give her flowers, right? And what ended up taking place or transpiring was he took umbrage with, of course, anti-black racism. He was dealing with racial battle fatigue, and he ended up shooting a bunch of people on a commuter train in Long Island. And as we all know, a brother Khalid Muhammad said, I love Colin Ferguson. He said, I have no official position, so I can say I love him. And he was on the Donahue show, the Phil Donahue show, who anyone doesn't know was created right here in the good old city and state of Dayton, Ohio. And he said, you love a man who kills random people, 6 people on the commuter train. And Khalid Muhammad said, I love Colin Ferguson. He said, I am sensitive to the loss of life. He says, but I love Colin Ferguson just as much as America loves General MacArthur, General Schwarzkopf, General Eisenhower, etc. He said, America awards her killers and gives them ribbons, stripes, and bars. And so when Black people rise up after years of pain and frustration, I understand after 400 years. So I don't think it's snapping at all. I think it is a reasonable and rational response to the killing, unarmed, and intentional deletion of Black people here in America.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. So I generally, when it comes to certain things, obviously certain topics, like I said, you don't want to see, you want to be sensitive to death, and like I said, you want to put it in this totality,
Right.
Cause like I said, because like what was the brother's name that was doing all that, the DC sniper, Muhammad, I can't think of his
John Wesley Muhammad.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, at one point you could make that case, but then when they did the investigation, he was just trying to, like, what was it? He was trying to, like, get his wife, but then he just kind of, like, started. Yeah, it was a mess. But but like for certain brothers, man, like you said, enough is enough.
Yeah. You talking about John Wesley Muhammad? Yeah, he just was on some other stuff. He had issues with his ex-wife, and he just started wild. And then the bad thing about that is, we talked about Lee Malvo, the young man that he was able to in a negative manner. He got 7, 8, 9 life sentences. So he's never going to see the light of day to come back to the town again. So that's
that was
unfortunate. Go right ahead, brother. Brother LMA. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties once again. Mr. Sandman, I got your message. And if you're able to tap back in 20 minutes, that'd be greatly appreciated. But yeah, so I definitely understand where you're coming from there. But I think when we talk about honoring people who are willing to not only make the ultimate sacrifice, but truly, as some people would say, clap back, I think that's something to understand. As I said before, we typically are miseducated into honoring people who do not act or advocate or fight for our freedoms, right? We know, as I said before, and I shared that post from Dio Kenyatta, we do not owe our freedoms to the military. In fact, as someone who is a veteran who served in the military, LMA, you served in the military as well. Am I correct?
Yes, correct. I was in the Navy.
Yes, and we know this. When you're serving in the military and you're fighting on the nation, you're not fighting to preserve American freedoms. You typically
absolutely.
In other countries, if it happens of other countries, the very freedoms that we say we love and hold near and dear. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, honestly, like there's going to be 2 institutions that are closer to destroying your rights, and that's like the military and the police. So, if when the government gets too, let's say the whole, the issue, like the Second Amendment, when they talk about like the government being tyrannical, when the government is tyrannical, the military is going to be the first one that's going to be stumping all over your rights. So, I mean, but like even when I was in, I quickly understood that, we're not fighting for I wasn't quick, but like about halfway through, I kind of realized like we're not fighting for freedom. We're fighting to, just Raytheon. We're fighting for just conquest. We're fighting for oil. We're fighting for this is like this is not about freedom. You know what I'm saying? This is the what was it? George Bush said they hate us for our freedoms. And then what was it?
Right, you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up because I remember Howard Zinn, who was a radical historian. He's transitioned, but he was for writing the book. I peeped the people's history. You can read that piece. I'm going to read it real quick. He wrote the book, A People's History of the United States of America from 1492 to the present. And he mentions he was being interviewed in response to President Bush's statement, they hate us because of our freedoms. And he said, no, they take umbrage with America and American people because of the hypocrisy and the fact that they are denying them the very freedoms that they say they believe in and So this is the reality from the mainstream media. We know that's propaganda. And so this is why I think it's important that we have these type of conversations right here at, of course, the Movement Speaks and Be Quiet Network, a Pan-African channel where we believe in being, of course, in being unapologetically African, unapologetically Black. And of course, we understand that we can gain a competitive advantage in the world by always betting on Black. Mr. LMA, go right ahead.
Hey, can you hear me okay? I switched
I hear you just fine.
okay, audio inputs. Okay, good. Yeah. But no, this is even when I was in the military, like it was like towards like the middle. Like I was having some for different reasons now, but like I was definitely having some strong, hesitations. It wasn't like, out of fear. I was in the Navy, so we weren't like combat like that. But I
Right.
definitely saw the military not as a force for freedom. Like that
Right.
became pretty apparent. And like there was a sense of, I ain't gonna say cognitive dissonance, but I was just like, yeah, I'm done with this. Like we're not doing what I did a couple of anti-war protests, while I was still in the military. Like I was not feeling it. Yeah, so even when I got out, I was pretty much done with it. I wanted nothing to do with the military, nothing to do with the government, but
How many
like I said,
years did you serve?
I ended up doing 10.
Woo! Okay, you could have did another 10 and retired.
I thought about that, but I was like, I would have never made it. I would have been kicked out. I would have been. I just didn't like it.
You have been radicalized to where you couldn't stomach the bullshit.
Well, no, not just that. Not just that. It was a technical thing like that. Personally, you can only, or professionally, you can only rise so far in the military. Like after a while, you just become a glorified paper pusher, and I wasn't interested in that. So, but I wasn't, like I said, back in the day, I told you I was a little bit on the, I was on that I gotta put it, conservative train. So I didn't have the same mindset, but I was definitely anti-war.
Right.
I was definitely anti-war. I was anti-establishment. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and this is a brief
Go
pivot. What led you to pivoting or turning away from the conservative movement?
So this was, I can almost remember, I can't remember the day, but I can remember the situation. It was, we had, back in the 2010s, we had a string of police killings of Black people. Usually I just kind of, I was kind of like in the middle of the road, but I mean, a little backstory. So the brand of conservatism I was basically a libertarian, right? And, so I really, kind of got deep into like, uh, the economics of it, the way they, described it. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, did a lot of lectures and stuff like that. So I was really into it. And the one thing they kind of like, glossed over, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because, libertarian, their biggest thing, they call it the NAP, so the non-aggression principle, right? So basically, if you probably know, but like the main principle of libertarianism, you can do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody, right? So they would, kind of talk about like, why it's wrong for taxation, why it's wrong, all the ways that the government is wrong, blah, 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 right? And they would talk about just American history, just talk about American, government like dogs or whatever, right? But the one thing, once I became, aware, I realized that, good a minute, these guys never, ever, ever talked about slavery. They talked about what the government was doing to this white guy and that white guy, how this white guy had to stand up for his freedom, yada yada yada. But they never ever ever talked about slavery, which was the most egregious and in your face violation of the non-aggression principle. They talk about how all this stuff. So that was like the brand of conservatism I was dealing with, right? And so and the way they kind of talk about it, through omission, right? They kind of let you believe that Black people are in the position that they're in because they don't have the industrialists, they don't have the they don't work hard, yada yada yada, right? So
all that good.
when so you had these string of killings or whatever, and then like there was this kind of this resurgence of Black history, and then just kind of going into like the history of like how we got here and how we're in this position. And when I learned about um, Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that shit hit me like a ton of bricks
Mm.
because it was basically I've been in this libertarian circles for years, and all they said was if you do these things, you will build society, right? And so here I'm being, confronted with the fact that we did do all of these things. We were, we worked hard, we were studious, we were trading, we were doing all this stuff. We had a
Yeah, they were
society that was, built, not society. I mean, obviously under, crazy circumstances, but we still had, we had a functioning, economy, a functioning society. We had, social norms. We had all this stuff. And then, whites came in and destroyed it. And then I was sort of like, when I saw that, I just began to look at like where we are now. I'm like, wait a minute, I can draw a line, from Tulsa, Oklahoma to the kid in the ghetto. Like I can draw a line from that. And then like I just went down this rabbit hole, and then once I was disillusioned, because at that point I was deep. Like if you would have asked anybody, they knew that I was a libertarian, and that was it. You know what I'm saying? Because that's all I talked about. I was engrossed in it. And then when that bubble burst, that I found out that I felt horrible too. I felt like, damn, I said some, because I just said some wild shit. I thought wild shit about Black people because look at us, we're all in the ghetto and shit like that, not realizing that we were put there. That every time that even was in the country, like we started off as slaves, you know what I'm saying, and we went from that to Jim Crow and all this other stuff. So I'm like, damn, like it's no wonder we're in this position. And from that point on, it was no looking back. So I was like, damn, I messed up. I got to make up for lost time. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay. Very good. Well, oftentimes in those type of movements, part of the goal is for people to be uneducated, of history.
Yeah.
That way you should control your thinking and subsequently your behavior.
Yeah. So I'm glad that I broke out of that because it was that was like a huge thing, and it kept going.
So let me ask you this: when you gained this information, did you confront your libertarian compatriots?
Oh, I mean, I wasn't in close proximity to a lot of them. Like I was in close proximity when I was in the Navy, but then like once I left and I was kind of on my own, I wasn't around. I just but like once I did that, I never went back. So I never had a chance to confront somebody or get into an argument about libertarian values or whatever, or why they let this shit out. Like I never got a chance to do that. And I don't need to, but like
right,
I would.
Right. It's not like they hold the leverage to power, and having debating with them is going to actually benefit us in any tangible way or form.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I do think that there are some things that they have some interesting views, and I think that some aspects of it is some aspects are worth exploring. But it's like sometimes I break out the one of my thoughts was like the 3 P's of politics is like the profits, the personalities, and the principles. So the principles I didn't necessarily have an issue with, but looking back, like the personalities that are in and out, like they got some really warped views of history, and so yeah, I couldn't go back to that. But yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So real quick, family, if you're watching, particularly on Twitter, I know we got quite a few followers on Twitter, so I'm giving thanks. Or X, formerly known as Twitter. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, right, at Bakari K. Lumumba. So make sure you follow us on Twitter. Mr. K, appreciate you tapping in. Got your email. I'm going to check that out this evening. What you sent me. And so you want us to give a brief synopsis. So very quickly, family, if you have not, go to Amazon and check out, of course, my first book, The Red, Black, and Green Papers, Views on Race, Power, and Society from a 21st Century Pan-Africanist. You can simply type in my name, Bakari Lumumba, and of course, make that purchase for $14.99. That is, once again, on Amazon, The Red, Black, and Green Papers, Volume 1, views on race, power, and society from a 21st century Pan-Africanist. I definitely believe you all would enjoy. I even read the synopsis of the text. The Red, Black, and Green Papers are a collection of essays that examine issues pertinent to the African world, ranging from the contemporary state of Pan-Africanism, the nonsensical machinations, graft, and expedient anti-Black misandry of Dr. Umar Johnson, Afrophobia, and the rise of foundation of Black America and American descendants of slavery movements, to the perilous condition of Haiti due to Western, primarily U.S. interference in South Africa 30 years after the fall of apartheid. So definitely, family, tap in. You could go to Amazon and, of course, purchase my first book, of course, The Red, Black, and Green Papers, Volume 1, Views on Race, Power, and Society from a 21st Century Pan-Africanist. And you can simply type my name in the search engine on Amazon to be able to make that purchase. Mr. K, we're discussing, of course, honoring Africana Freedom Fighters, our veterans, right? So we want to highlight and, of course, lift up and praise veterans who have fought, Black people who have fought for our freedom, right? Not people who have served in the the imperialist American military, but individuals who fought for the freedom of African people. And so, of course, if there's anyone that you want to honor or name, you can do that. And then, of course, part of the question that we asked was, if you served in the United States military, are you somehow in some way a Black freedom fighter? And of course, my argument is no, and this is coming from someone who served in the military. Lumumba, I can't lie, it's all your fault. I've been now being creative and using the term Afrophobia. Well, listen, it's not even me, but I have to give praise where praise is due. I believe, of course, as a member of the Academy, paying proper attribution to the individuals and entities that have taught me. And so I actually learned the term Afrophobia from Sister Danielle Boaz in her book, Banning Black Gods, Law and Religions of the African Diaspora. This is where I first learned the term Afrophobia. She talks about, of course, religious racism regarding African religions and African-inspired religions, particularly here in the decadence and dysphoria of the African diaspora. So, as you all know, we were scheduled to do a lunch and learn in October with Dr. Boaz. Had to cancel that, but we're going to reconnect and actually have her on the live. I'm going to read this book from cover to cover, and we are then going to do an interview with her regarding religious racism, Afrophobia, and banning Black gods here in the Western Hemisphere. So don't worry about that, but definitely if you can get this book as well, of course, her text is where I first learned the term Afrophobia. So definitely want to give a shout out to her. But Mr. K, listen, you always show up, you show love. I'm going to need you this time, brother, if you can. Please tap into the show, be part of the conversation. You do not have to cam up, and you can use a pseudonym as you're doing now. But tap in, be part of the combo as we're discussing honoring Africana Freedom Fighters, our veterans, right? So we're celebrating Pan-African Veterans Day. We want to know which veterans you are willing to honor in the fight for, of course, African people's freedom. So, LMA, go right ahead. I do apologize for cutting you off if I did.
No, it's all good. I think there's one guy I want to revisit. What was his name? John Robinson, the brown condor. He was the, you know what I'm talking about? He was the gentleman. He was the aviator. Say again?
No, I don't. I'm looking him up now.
Yeah. I think it was. Look up the brown condor. He was John. It was Robinson. He was an aviator who assisted Ethiopia in their fight against Italy.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. The American aviator, an activist who was hailed as the brown condor for his service in the Imperial Ethiopian Air Force against fascist Italy. Robinson pushed for equal opportunities for African Americans during his early career and was able to open his own eponymous aviation school, in addition to initiating a program for Black pilots at his college Tuskegee Institute. Robinson's achievements as an aviator were in stark contrast to the limited opportunities for most African Americans in aviation careers, and were an important factor in reducing racially based prohibitions in the United States. Robinson is sometimes referred to as the father of the Tuskegee Airmen for inspiring this all-Black group of pilots who served in the United States Armed Forces following the United States entry into World War II. And he ended up transitioning in Ethiopia, and he's buried in a cemetery in Addis Ababa to this day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to say he died in a it was an unfortunate accident, but yeah, like I think for a lot of brothers, they want because I think we want that to what's the word I'm looking for? Venerate like warriors, like people who who fought in war. So like the closest thing we got, like I said, is the black servicemen. But like you said,
Yes,
there's an issue with that because now you're not fighting for black people, you're fighting
against our interests.
for imperial Western imperialism. So, but
Yes,
this brother, what I'm saying, he was fighting for an African country against another European fascist country. So, I mean, if you need your fix,
yeah.
I
And
think
I gotta tell you, brother, you're cooking with fish grease, right? Because I wasn't aware of this brother, so I'm
yeah,
definitely proud that
yeah,
you made me aware of him. I'm gonna make sure that I put him on for our daily Black History facts. But
yeah, yeah. Like I
wow,
said,
yeah, yeah.
and I want to say during that time, and it was, like it was basically for me like one of the big what ifs in America because I want to say at that time there was a pretty good groundswell of black black African American men who wanted to volunteer the fight on the side of Ethiopia against Italy because and the thing
Absolutely.
that say that again.
I said absolutely.
Yeah, and like it sucked because even though Italy was considered the axis of evil, you wouldn't let black men fight your enemy unless you were in charge, right? So those black, like that would have been like a big what if, like you know, Black America, we would be talking so much shit if that was the case. If we would actually go over there and get some scouts, like we would have been talking mad shit. But that was like one of my big what ifs. Like, what if Black Americans could have got over there and then helped out, the Ethiopian brothers against their war against Italy? I mean, that would have put. I mean,
Hmm.
that would have
Well,
been like
real quick, LMA,
the what's it called?
here at the Movement Speaks Big Line Network, we use the term African American rather than Black American. As we know, African Americans are the only racial ethnic group in America that are defined by a color rather than an actual ethnic group or geographical
Yeah.
place. So something to
I
consider.
think well. Yeah.
No, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. No, you're right. You're right. I try to say African American on this one. But yeah, I would have loved to have seen like look in the history books and see some African Americans fighting in that would have been I think that would have brought us so much pride because like it was a sense of fear, but like you had brothers that were signing up and they were ready to go. So
Mhm.
I wish you could have got some action on that one. I think that would have been really good for So we would not be having this argument about Pan African Pan Africanism is dead or whatever. I don't think we'd be having this argument. But that's just a big history's what if.
Right, absolutely. And I do recall vividly that W.B. Du Bois, right? He led a Hands Out Ethiopia rally in Harlem, right? When Italy sought to invade Ethiopia. So definitely we know Ethiopia is the only, of course, African nations that have never been colonized. They were briefly occupied but never colonized. And so when we talk about honoring our veterans and our freedom fighters, I gotta give a shout out to Menelik II and Empress Tatu, who of course were they were of course the king and queen, the emperor, empress during that time in of course Ethiopia. And they both, keyword both, as we like to say in the Black community, both BOAF, both were on the battlefield leading troops into battle during the Battle of Ottawa in March of 1896. So Menelik II and Empress Tatu.
Okay.
Gotta give them some love. Gotta give them some love. In fact, I shared this with you all before when I was on that guy No Fugazi's platform on his panel, and he talked about women shouldn't have the right to vote. This is prior to, of course, the 2024 election. And he stated, I said, why? He said, because women can't serve in the military. I said, well, there are women who serve in the military. And he said they shouldn't. But long story short, I said it to him. Well, he stated that the reason why was also because women didn't have the right to vote in Europe. And I said, well, brother, you're Black. Why are you citing European history as a roadmap for how we should do things, right? But he then stated that I told him, "Were you aware of the fact that in medieval Africa, women had the right to vote?" He said, "Well, did they also have the right to? Did they serve in the military?" I said, "Absolutely." He said that was a cultural expectation. And he stated, well, that's why they were colonized. I said, well, no, that's not why they were colonized. I'm very familiar with the history of colonialism and colonization. And I said, Europeans were getting their derrieres kicked for over a century until the creation of the Maxim machine gun. And he said, well, fine, can you provide me any examples of African people defeating European powers in battle in which women were part of the fighting force? I said, I could give you two, not one, two, because we can't have one of anything, we need two. Can't have one or two guns without squeezing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said one would be the Battle of Adwa, Ethiopia, 1896. Shout out to Menelik II and Empress Tatu. And I said the second would be a derivative of Africa, that is Haiti, the Haitian Revolution. So he shut the fuck up. Let me even stop playing with me before I get you up out of here, B. Don't make me get you up out of here. You know what I'm saying? I take you up top. This is what we do out here. You know what I mean? In a real way, though. I said, we always bet on black in a real way. Take that motherfucking European shit on somewhere, B. We don't do that over here.
Mm-hmm.
As his response, I mean, you have a lot of knowledge, and I'm not Mr. K or Brother Dwayne in any way, shape, or form. I said, nah, but you just don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I said, here's my issue, right? So this is your platform, is your barbecue, it tastes good, I'm happy to be here, right? But my concern is that he has over 100 some thousand subscribers, and you're promoting information that is adverse, that is ahistorical. That's a fucking problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
And then people, this is why Brother B. Quillan said we don't do liquor store scholarship. We don't do liquor store scholarship here at Lumumba Speaks and B. Quillan Network. There's a reason why there's a DR in front of my name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Major problem. Yeah. Major problem. And when you talk to most individuals who, as you like to say, brother, are conservatives.
Yeah.
Or
so you said I couldn't say that word. You said I couldn't say that word, so I had to stop. Well, I stopped on your show.
You know what I'm saying? Right. Because I just didn't want to normalize people using racial epithets just because you disapprove of someone's political position. But what we find in individuals who even are opposed to Pan-Africanism, they tend to lack a working knowledge of history.
Yeah.
It's just a reality. So something to consider. Once again, family, if you're on Twitter, you could tap in here on YouTube, or you can, of course, put your comments in the chat. Would love to hear from you all, get your thoughts on honoring, of course, freedom fighters, right? Africana freedom fighters, for honoring our veterans who, of course, believe in the right and just victory of our struggle. So we got to give a shout out to Thomas and Carr. Got to give a shout out to Thomas and Carr. Shout out to Burkina Faso, land of the upright men. We know, 5th president of Burkina Faso. He was taken from us October 15th, 1987, due to, of course, a French-backed coup that was implemented by Blaise Compaoré, who, of course, unfortunately was his best friend at the time. As Thomas and Carr taught us, when we're talking about fighting against neo-colonialism, it's an issue of, or do we have champagne and caviar for few, or clean drinking water for many?
Yeah,
I think those are issues that we're still facing to this day. We find that here even in the United States, we talk about the boule, right? We talk about these issues. People not understanding that in some ways, in shape or form, this is a class issue as well as a racial struggle. So something to consider there.
Yeah. I got to do some more research on the guy. I know John Brown. He's has. I mean, with John. Well, I don't know where I would put white abolitionists in this. But there was one brother.
But I would say I would argue John Brown was more than an abolitionist. He was a freedom fighter.
Okay. Yeah, because I was looking up, what's the guy? Osborne Perry Anderson. Okay. He was an abolitionist, and he said the only surviving African-American member of John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, became a soldier in the Union Army during the American Civil War. And they said that he and John Brown, they ran up in, was it Colonel Lewis Washington, the great-grandnephew of George Washington, and was taken hostage by the raiders. So he ran up in George Washington's nephew's spot, You know what I'm saying? Put the fofos in his.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I always thought that was, I just learned about him recently. Yeah, what's his name? Osborne Perry Anderson. Osborne P. Anderson.
What Dead Prez say? He said, make a homie wanna run up in the White House with my gay job. Click clack, give me my shit back. Biat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they had that song, W4 said, run up in the White House with the gay job. Click clack, give me my shit back. I remember that song, and he was like, he said, so they owe me, but got me filling out. He said, they owe me, but got me filling out this application. My JOB is just like a plantation. Give me my shit back. Yeah. Man, that was a hell of a song. Came out in 2004. I remember I got hit the Dead Prayers around 08. And I used to play that every day going to work. He said, they owe me, but they got me filling out this application. My JOB for just like a plantation. Yeah. Absolutely. So just, once again, I think this is great history, great information. We make sure we want to always, honor the moral obligation to remember those who came before us, and that's part of the greatness of our history. That we honor our ancestors, we honor our elders, we honor those who were willing to make the ultimate sacrifice and engage in valor for our sake, not for the sake of course, the imperial machinations of the global north. And so I think it's important that we counteract the misinformation machine by making sure that we're always taking time to honor those that came before us, those who fought for our freedom, for our liberty, and for our justice, right? And we know as Marcus Garvey taught us, and even as Bishop Henry Manil Turner taught us, he says the black man in America has as much chance of being a man as a frog does in a snake den. Like, it's not going to happen. We got to get the French toast out of here, right? So something to consider, family. But final thoughts, brother, and then of course we're going to check out this evening.
Great, great program. Like I said, yeah, I do think that when we have these, American unholy days, we definitely need to make sure that we, put our spin on it, and we, venerate our struggle, our heroes, our fighters, and 'cause like I said, President's Day, what we got doing, what we got to do with a President's Day. What do we got to do with the St. Patrick's Day, or what I'm saying? Now, it's not to say that other folks can't have their own stuff, but we need to make sure that we are celebrating our, our heroes and sheroes.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely. So one more time, family, before we go, make sure you go to Amazon, put my name in the search engine, and purchase my first book on Amazon, The Red, Black, and Green Papers, Volume 1, Views on Race, Power, and Society from a 21st Century Pan-Africanist. I will put the link in the description, and hopefully you all will be pleased with my book. Until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Always, always, always bet on Black. Peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on Black. Peace.